evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest of our GA Coach webinar series. Tonight, we're very thankful and grateful to have Professor Wade Gilbert, who's speaking to us all the way from Fresno in California. Wade is an internationally renowned coaching consultant and sports scientist. He's conducted coaching workshops all around the world, spanning all various competitive levels and in just about every other sport that you can think of. In addition to that, he has authored several highly acclaimed books, including his most recent, Coaching Better Every Season, and over 100 scientific publications. He was the lead author for the US Olympic Committee Quality Coaching Framework, and he's also editor-in-chief of the International Sport Coaching Journal. Wade is going to give us a short presentation tonight outlining his own current thoughts on coaching matters, and then we're going to finish off for the rest of the session based on questions either that you guys have already submitted or questions that you guys might wish to submit tonight. If you want to submit a question for Wade, there's if you toggle over the center of the screen there's this little speech bubble with a question mark through it. If you want to type in your question there and send it in, we can try and get through as many as we can before the end of this evening. So Wade, over to you. You can take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, and welcome everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share and be part of your coaching journey. So we decided that I would share 15-20 minute kind of overview of some of the things I'm doing and learning about great coaching, and I think it will address a lot of the questions that have come in, and then we'll have time to have some conversations and continue thinking about what good coaching looks like and how we can be better coaches. All right, let's take a look. So in my world, the last few years, I've spent quite a bit of time learning from great coaches all over the world, all different sports, including the GAA and Ireland. And some of the groups I have in front of you here on the slide are different teams and groups that I've been involved with. I was supposed to be in Japan in a couple of weeks for pre-Olympic preparations with Team Canada, working with one of their national teams, and obviously that's all changed. So Tokyo 2021 likely that's the next step for us. But then I also, in addition to working with high-level teams, national teams, and professional sports, I do spend a lot of time working with youth sports and school-based sport. And I also coach. So at the moment, I'm coaching ice hockey, 12 and 13-year-olds. And my son plays ice hockey, and I've coached my daughter through softball and soccer. And so I also try and connect the things I learned from the science of coaching and great coaches in high performance environments and youth sport environments to actual coaching. So trying to make sense of these things and then go out and use them with 11-year-olds and figure out how can we create better environments for our kids. And I'll just give a quick little overview of some of the principles that I have found to be evident across all these different stories and journeys. So by having these opportunities to connect and learn from people all over the world in different sports, it's allowed me to kind of step back and see the common themes. So we all use this term best practices. That's quite common. We look for best practices, but for me, it's really about best principles. So yes, it's interesting to learn what Irish Football Association does or what American football team does or Cricket Australia, but it's less about what they do and why they do it the way they do it. So what's the principle behind those practices? So I'm going to just open real quickly with the main question: what does good coaching look like? And I sometimes have a tendency to fall into scientific mode or academic mode and overcomplicate things. Just get to the point. So what does good coaching look like? And I was thinking about this before I got on the call today. And for me, this is what good coaching looks like. And I could sum it up in this one statement here at the top of this slide. Just remind yourself that sport was never created for coaches. And where I see coaches falter or get into trouble is when they forget that, or they never really thought about it, and they make it more about them and their needs. It's not for you. It's not about you. It's about them. And honestly, kids would be fine without coaches, and sports would go on and sport teams would find a way. So I'm not diminishing the role of a coach. I don't want you to get that impression, but it's really not about us. And we think about, all the research shows, why do kids play? Why do adults play? It's not to be coached. No one has really ever gone out, kids in particular, right, and asked if they could play sports so they could be coached. They want to be with their friends. They want to learn a game, and they want to have fun. And that's pretty consistent across decades of research. So if we remember, we're there to help them meet their needs for fun, friendship, and skill development and competition, not mine. It's about them, not me. That will keep our focus on building athletes instead of using them. And I've lived it, I've seen it, I see it every day. We have a tendency to use athletes instead of build them, especially kids. And it's even how you think about how coaches talk when they get together, like, who are we going to use on defense? Who are we going to use in goal? Who are we going to use for the game against another team on the weekend? Like, we even use that language. We use kids to win a game, but that's not the purpose of this. Yes, we want to win, and winning does matter, but it shouldn't be at the expense of using kids. It's for them, it's not for us. I remember having a friend visit from Canada, watching youth sport, baseball, I think it was, here when I was coaching, and afterwards, after the game, because he was watching multiple games, said, you know what? And these were 8-year-old kids. Said, this really isn't for kids, is it? This is about the adults. This is about the adult coaches playing games against each other. They just happen to be using the kids as their pawns in this game for adults. I said, yeah, you got a point. So it brings me to this slide here with a key message I like to remind people. We're in the people business. We're not a hurling coach. We're a kids coach of kids who happen to play hurling. So we coach people first, sports second. And this is an image here of Jill Ellis, former national soccer coach for Team USA. Had an opportunity to learn from her and spend time with her, and it just reiterates most successful, only coach to ever win 2 World Cups in soccer. And it's about people, not soccer. It's about people first who happen to play soccer. So if we keep reminding ourselves we're in the people business, we build people who happen to play a sport, that will help carry us a long way. So I would like to take the last remainder of this kind of overview to focus on a couple of key points that I think would cut across any different sports setting. These are principles of good coaching. So how do we build athletes? How do we create the right kind of environment for peak experiences? How do we build trust in our teams? And then how do we create that right kind of team identity or team culture? And I'll be sharing this slide deck with Peter, and he'll post it. So if I go a bit fast at times, you'll have access to this after. So when we think about athlete development, we have a global framework now for understanding what our goal is. What's the target? How will I know if I'm a good coach? And it's not about how many games you win. If you do these 4 things, if you win these 4 outcomes, you will probably win more games. But more importantly, you're going to win kids, and you're going to win development. So that we refer to these as the 4 C's: competence, confidence, connection, and character. And these underpin all our global coaching frameworks at the moment. Competence is better athlete. Confidence is more resilient athlete. So are they willing to come back after failure? Mental toughness, grit, whatever term you want to use. Connection, are they a better teammate? Are they better able to connect with other people? And character is the idea of moral development, if you will, right? So these 4 C's are what we should be trying to win. And it doesn't matter if it's the national team coach or coach of 6-year-old kids. This cuts across sport. If you're winning these 4 C's, you will have a more successful experience, and you will end up winning more games at the end. But we also know if you're coaching kids, you could do everything right and not win a bunch of games. If my kids are bigger and faster than your kids, my kids are going to beat your kids. Doesn't matter what I'm doing as a coach, to some extent. So I can focus on winning these 4 C's. And with that in mind, how can I design good learning environments? There's 4 principles that I'd want to keep in mind when I'm designing a practice. Where do I start teaching? So what do the kids already know? So when I'm designing a practice plan, am I thinking about meeting them where they are? So what things do they already know or can they already do? And my practices should extend that. So don't make it about drills or activities, make it about development. What would motivate a kid to want to learn what I'm trying to teach? So just because I have this really great drill that I saw on YouTube or someone shared with me, will my kids care to do that? What's their motivation to want to do that? Have I thought about the pieces? So every time I try to teach something to someone, it's like a puzzle. And there's lots of pieces. You think about how you put a puzzle together. You put all the pieces on a table, and then you start to look for sections, and you start to join things together. It should be the same way of thinking when I want to teach them a skill. Have I thought about the pieces of that skill? And then the last principle here would be focus practice with very deliberate or specific feedback. So what role does feedback play in learning? And I'm going to show you one of my favorite slides here on that I think captures the essence of great feedback. And this is a graphic that USA Football put together, and I've done some work with them over the years, and I love this way of thinking about feedback. So when I give feedback to my athletes, and we need to get away from positive and negative. The idea of feedback being positive or negative is an outdated idea. Feedback is feedback. So if I'm giving you information on how you did something or how to do something, it's neither positive nor negative, it's just feedback. So what I want to think about instead is pull and push feedback. The formal terms, if you look in the research, would be task intrinsic and augmented. So pull feedback or intrinsic feedback is I'm trying to pull the information out of my athlete. So I ask them. So they perform a skill. Instead of me stopping and telling them what they did wrong or how to fix it, I ask them, how'd that feel? What do you think you could do differently so that you could hit the target next time? So pull the feedback out of them, because they can sense things. And the other end of the continuum is what we call push feedback or augmented. So I'm going to augment what they already can feel. I'm going to push information on them. So you see in this graphic, you have a continuum from pull to push. So which is better? It depends. It depends on the purpose of your practice that day. It depends on the time of season. It depends on the individual athlete. It depends on your purpose. But you should be comfortable using both depending on what the athlete needs. I'm going to switch to this idea of peak experiences. And you may have come across this before, this idea of flow or playing in the zone. What is an optimal experience? And we've all had moments of this where we just had a great experience. And it doesn't have to be in sport. It could be driving a car, could be writing at work, it could be anything, spending time with friends, where you have this type of experience we refer to as a flow or peak experience of being in the zone. And this, if we can create those types of experiences, are addictive. It literally is a drug, because there's certain neurochemicals that are released and hormones when you have this type of experience. And so it's rewarding. People want more of it. And this is where you see a lot of kids, when they drop out of sport, they're not getting this. So they go and find other places where they can get it. And that could be other sports, it could be other activities. So if we can create more flow experiences or zone experiences in our sport environments, we're going to increase commitment and motivation to the sport. They're going to want to come back. They're going to want more of that. And there's 9 dimensions of flow, and I won't go through all these, but I do want to highlight the first one. Is the challenge skill balance, and it's on the slide. It's in yellow or gold because it's actually referred to as the golden rule of flow. It's the main one that we'd want to make sure that we are conscious of, and we can control that when we design practices. So what is the challenge skill balance? This graph that you have in front of you that shows the quadrants and that relationship between challenge and skill is important for us to be aware of as coaches. If you look on your screen on the bottom left corner, when people are in a low skill, low challenge situation, they don't care. So I'm going to go, these are comfortable situations. So it's not challenging enough, or I don't have the skill level to do what you're asking me to do. It's perceived as too great of a distance for me to be able to do that right now. So I either give up, it's apathy. Yeah, why bother? This is stupid. I can't do it, right? Or they get bored because it's too easy. And what do kids do when they're in that bottom part of the graph? They're off task. And then you have discipline issues. And kids aren't paying attention. And kids are hitting each other. Kids are throwing balls. And then we get angry as a coach. And then we yell at them. Or we make them run. And again, we aren't thinking about why are they bored or apathetic. Maybe because I haven't designed a practice environment or drills that are challenging and will stretch them into that flow environment that meet their skill level. So really what I want to do is keep them up in the top right corner as much as possible, that flow spot where there's high challenge, high skill. But it's really more about the balance, or I guess the alignment between skill and challenge. So they don't have to be highly skilled. It's the challenge has to match their skill. So it's a match. So this could be a novice. This could be a 5-year-old kid could have flow. And if you let kids play, if you got out of the way and just went to a playground or a park and just watch kids play, they're in flow all the time. Because when kids play on their own, they adjust the challenge to match their skill. If they don't spend a bunch of time on their own practicing or playing games that are too easy, they'd be bored. They stop doing it. So they make it a little harder, or they change the game, or they change the teams, move stuff around. So the challenge is raised a bit to more match their skill level. And if it's too high, so if kids get together and they play a game, if one team is destroying the other team and they're winning by a large margin, kids will stop the game and reorganize the teams because it's boring otherwise, right? So we can learn a lot from kids. There's a lot of research to support this. So what I want to do as much as possible when I design my practice environments and my club environments is create more flow, moments of flow, where the challenges I'm putting in front of them match up with their skill level, or maybe just a little bit beyond their skill level. So there's things that if they stretched and really paid attention and really tried, they could do it. And then once they can do that, I raise the challenge again. So I'm constantly moving that up as their skills rise. And it's more about the perception of the challenge, not the actual challenge. So the kids, this ties into confidence and belief. Do they believe they can do that? Do they believe they can meet your challenge? And that, you play a big role in that as a coach, and their teammates too, right? In helping them believe they can do things. Yes, you haven't done it yet, but you could. And so how can we build their confidence? Through feedback, through giving them opportunities to succeed so that they can see it. They have to feel it and see it to believe it. This is just a graphic here that I pulled off this website. You have the website URL here. Just a different way of representing that. But ideally, we want to keep the kids in as much as possible in those flow moments. And it doesn't mean you will not be in those types of moments all the time. Like if you had an hour of practice, it wouldn't be an hour of flow. But there should be moments of it. There should be parts of your practice where they feel that, because that's addictive. Then it makes them want to come back. They want more of that. You can play with this on your own at some point. It's kind of fun. There is a website where you can take a little quiz and get a flow profile. It probably wouldn't be appropriate for little kids, but you could try it maybe with high schools or college teams. I've done it with some college teams, but just for yourself. It's a neat website, and you get a nice little report. Gets you thinking about how you design practices, and are there moments of that in my environment and my club. Okay, trust. So when we think about another component of great coaching, more and more I've seen the central role of trust, how critical trust is. If people don't trust you, none of this works. Athletes have to trust you. That's what kids do with teachers, right? They're kind of testing them. That's what we all do when we meet someone. Basically, it's a game of posturing and feeling each other out, so that we're basically trying to figure out, is this someone I should trust? And so we see this more and more with the best coaches, that they realize this. And this is a nice quote from Steve Kerr, one of the best coaches in the world at the moment, saying, to me, the techniques and tactics, or the X's and O's, they're an important part of coaching, but relatively small part. 80% of it is just relationships and atmosphere. Now, he just pulled that number out of, there's no research to back up that it's 80%, but the point being, it's the majority of what we're doing should be on building relationships and trust. Because if they don't trust me, none of the other stuff I'm trying to do is going to matter. And Steve Kerr just started a podcast with Pete Carroll, who's an American football coach. And they, as far as I know, they just have the one episode right now. But people have really enjoyed this. That might be something fun for you to check out too. And we do know, with all the research on trust and performance, it's a pretty simple relationship. More trust, better success. Low trust, less success. So trust underpins performance. And how do we build trust? So I'll share two quick examples here. I always, it wouldn't be a presentation for me without a mention of Coach John Wooden. And he was very influential for a lot of people, our field, our discipline, our profession, and then me personally, spending time with him when I worked at UCLA. So a group of us connected to him created kind of a framework for good coaching. We called it pyramid of teaching success in sport. And again, we won't go through all this here, but I just want to show you the cornerstone. So the cornerstone of great coaching is love. But the key is how it's defined. Because of course, we all can interpret love differently, and unfortunately there are many scandals and issues around the world with sport and abuse. But the way we define love is acting in the best interest of each athlete. So if an athlete needs discipline and we discipline them, that's showing love. If an athlete did something well and they deserve praise, that's showing love. So it's coming all the way back to that first couple of slides I had where it's about them, not us. Help them meet their needs. And if they need discipline right now, give them discipline. That's showing love. And it's interesting, I only learned this last year, but Coach Wooden had a pyramid. Well, I knew about this for many years, but he had his own pyramid. That's why we modeled ours after his initial pyramid called the Pyramid of Success. And this was something he spent decades building as a framework for great performers. So for the learner, these are the building blocks of competitive greatness for the performer. So ours is more for the coach. But if you notice in here, you won't see the word love in here anywhere. And which doesn't make sense because he, to the day he died at 99, he always said the most important word in the English language is love. And yet the model that he left the world and is posted in gyms and offices all over the world, his pyramid of success, does not have love. So I never really thought much of it, to be honest with you, but a year ago I met up with a coach, a baseball coach, who shared an office with John Wooden at UCLA for many years. And he wrote a book about that experience. And he shared with me this story about how Coach Wooden integrated love into something he could share with the world before he passed away. So you may not be aware of this, but Coach Wooden wrote children's books as well. And it was a way for him to teach and share his message in a kid-friendly way. So he took his pyramid of success and he turned it into a kid's version. And that's what you see here. And you see all the building blocks. And you might be able to see it now where love is in here. So love is the mortar. Love holds the whole thing together. And I actually, it's funny because I have this book. I remember reading this book to my kids years ago. I never noticed the word love in there because if you go back here, you can see it's very small print, and you'd really have to know it's there, or be aware of it, and look for it. And then this coach who had spent all this time with him said, "Wait, I was with him when he died, and we talked about this, and talked about life and regrets." And he said one thing he was always bothered by is that he never had love in his pyramid. So when he wrote the kids' book, he made sure he put love in there, and he has the word love in there 96 times because he wrote this when he was 96 years old. So that gave him peace of mind that he was able to still put that out there in the world before he passed away. And we see this more and more, kind of an awakening around the world in all sports, different levels. I was in Australia doing an event, and someone shared this with me. It just came out in the news. And it's this idea about vulnerability. So how do we show love to each other? How do we model love? And a great way to do that is to be vulnerable. Share our stories, share our fears, share our dreams. Those are all ways to show love, which builds trust. And there's a little exercise that a lot of teams have been using lately, from youth teams to pro teams. It's called the 3H exercise, Hero, Hardship, Highlight. And I put a little image there of John Gordon and his newsletter. And if you search for that, you'd find a description of it. And it's a fun activity that you could adapt to any team, any context. And it's a great way to build trust. And the last thing on trust that I'll share is an activity that I do with a lot of teams is I help them think of trust as a bank account. So you see a picture here of Bill Belichick, American football coach, and he talks a lot about trust. And how do you earn trust? And you earn trust through your behaviors. It has nothing to do with what you say you're going to do, it's what you do. And so I do this exercise with teams, and again, even with little young kids, say, okay, we have a bank account, a trust account for our team. And every one of our individual behaviors, every time we do anything, it's either a deposit into our bank account or a withdrawal from our bank account. So when you talk about a teammate behind their back or post something on social media negative about somebody, that's a withdrawal. That erodes our ability to perform well and our team trust. When you offer help to someone and support someone, that's a deposit. And I've even seen coaches actually have a piggy bank on their desk or a team jar, and they actually physically put pennies in. And so it's a way for people to see the connection between behaviors and trust and performance. And then the last slide here, I have, I could spend an hour on this one, but I'll just spend a minute or two and then we'll go into questions. It's this idea of team culture that I get asked about pretty much everywhere I go, and there's a lot of books at the moment on team culture and team leadership. And the more I've researched this and been around great teams, it struck me that you don't really teach culture, you spread culture. That's why I put here, culture is caught more than it's taught. So how do you create good team culture or good club culture? It's by making, it's like a virus, and it's timely. I mean, we're all living through this moment right now. How do viruses spread? We're all becoming experts on that. And you want to create contagious, infectious environments. So you want to have, you as a coach, right, can be a strong carrier of your team virus. You'd want maybe your team captain, maybe alumni, people who've played for you in the past, or that club board members, stakeholders. Like there's all these people associated with our club who are strong carriers of the virus. And we want them to infect our athletes and other people in our community with that team virus. So it's just the opposite of what we're trying to do with COVID in a sense, by wearing masks and not connecting to each other and wearing gloves. To spread my team culture, I want those connections. I want you to go out and infect other people. So it's really, you catch the environment, you catch the culture. And so we can do that if we think more about how viruses spread and less about, you've probably heard the term, it's quite common here at least, athlete buy-in. How do I get athletes to buy in? I always catch people and say, it's not a sales job. You're not selling your team culture. You have to infect them with it. So you create contagious environments through your behaviors. All right, Peter, I'm gonna pause there. That was the main stuff that I wanted to share. And I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Wade, thanks very much for that. The presentation was excellent, outstanding. And I think you've answered a significant number of the questions that maybe a lot of people had in the last little while. To start with, I think it's probably always good for whenever we speak that maybe the first question is about John Wooden. And it was great that you mentioned so much of it there. For maybe people who are less familiar, can you maybe explain who he was and his impact on coaching in the States?
Well, not just in the States, in the world. He, for many reasons. One, he was voted the best coach of the 20th century by most major news outlets. He won 10 championships in 12 years as a college coach in basketball at UCLA in Los Angeles. But it wasn't just the winning, it's how he won. And he wrote many books, he wrote many poems, he left behind a legacy of learning and teaching, always referred to himself as a teacher, never said I coached basketball. I taught basketball. I was the teacher at UCLA. And we know that the best coaches, the root of the word coach is teach. Coaching is teaching. So he lived that for us. And he actually was a school teacher, a high school teacher, before he became his famous college basketball coach. And then also, in addition to that, you would notice if you travel around the world, there's always examples of his influence. I mean, I've been very blessed and fortunate to have been around the world and met many, many, many coaches in different sports. And almost inevitably, they have a Coach Wooden book on their shelf, or the Pyramid of Success. And his legacy extends way beyond basketball. It's about how he created environments to build people. And I see there is a comment here. Did Coach Wooden never mention winning? How important was it to him? So, funny story. Coach Wooden was actually voted the best basketball player in the world in the 1930s. He was the first person here in North America to be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame as a player and a coach. So he was ultra competitive, to the point where you spend any time with him, he's always competing with you. He was very, very, very competitive, really wanted to win. Winning really mattered, but not at the expense of people. So life is competitive. Winning does matter. You compete for jobs, you compete for partners and spouses, you compete for everything in life. So teaching kids how to strive for winning and the importance of making an effort to win and preparing to win, absolutely. But winning at all costs and playing just my best kids and having the others sit on a bench so I can win a game at 6 years old, who cares? Yeah, you won a game, but you lost 6 kids who never want to play again. So winning does matter, but he never explicitly talked about winning. And I've talked to people who've played for him, because you think, come on, winningest coach of all time. At one point, other people have passed some of his records. Said never talked about winning. Goes, nope, never heard him use the word win or winning ever. So he didn't need to. He designed environments that were really highly competitive. Practices were fast-paced, highly competitive. And so you were always competing on his team. And it was kind of, why do I need to talk about winning? It would be like a fish talking to another fish about water. Of course, winning does matter. That's probably why we play the game. We want to beat that team on the other side of the field. But what can we focus on? We can focus on things that will put us in a position to win.
Given everything that's happened in the last number of weeks and months around the world, how do you think it will change how coaches coach and interact with their players and teams?
Yeah, we've already seen it. I'll be honest with you. We've already seen it here in the United States with safe sport and unending, unfortunate abuse scandals, child abuse, sexual abuse. So it's changed the way we coach. Giving a kid a pat on the back, giving a kid a hug, putting your arm around a kid. I mean, that's already changed. Now you add the virus issue and social distancing and having to be 6 feet away from a kid and wearing a mask. We're losing a human connection, and that definitely will make it harder to build connection and trust. That's wired into us. What do we do with babies when they cry? We hold them, we console them, we rock them. I mean, that's wired into us. There's some research I did some research, I was part of this too, but there was other research on the impact of touch, physical touch. So positive touch, soon as, like if I put my arm around your shoulder or touch your shoulder, that releases hormones, oxytocin, which is referred to as a cuddle hormone. And we get that from being coddled and as a baby. So there was a neat study with professional basketball, the NBA, where they had a hunch. Teams that had more positive touch, so high fives, chest bumps, hugs, also won more games. And sure enough, there was a direct correlation. And the player in the league who had the highest positive touch score between teammates ended up winning the MVP of the league that year. So we're losing that connection. So it definitely will make it harder for us to build connections and trust. No doubt about it.
Um, I don't know. I'm not sure if it was the same experience for you guys over there, but certainly for us in the first couple of weeks when we were locked down, um, there was a huge number of people started posting videos on social media of skill activities and challenges that for players and kids to do in their back garden and so on to keep guys maybe in touch. Um, One of the things that we've noticed in the last little while is that has sort of slipped away as something maybe that wasn't very sustainable for coaches to keep going on a day by day basis. But have you got suggestions maybe for some of the people on the call as to how they can interact remotely with their players and maybe try and sustain that trust that they've tried to build over the last while?
Yeah, and that's when I've been asked to speak quite a bit during this break, and the first thing there was an initial fear of not doing something. So the initial reaction was, we need to do something. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just need to give people space and get out of the way and they'll be fine, they'll cope, they'll adjust. I mean, that's how birds learn to fly, that's how kids learn to swim. I mean, that's how organisms learn to adapt and develop. We don't need to save them from every situation. Now, having said that, one thing you definitely want to do as a coach now is focus less on skill development, skill acquisition, fitness. Like there are national teams, I know they're really concerned about, wow, our fitness levels are going to drop and then we've got to start all over. I said, yep, that's the world we live in right now. Don't worry about it. They can't go to parks, they can't go to gyms. Don't worry about it. But your main goal right now is to build connection, sustain connection. That's your win. How can I win connection? So what I've seen succeed is continuing to hold some kind of regularly scheduled interaction. So if we used to practice Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 5 to 7, still gonna practice Wednesdays 5. So there's still something regular on their calendar where we get a Zoom call together or whatever platform you're using, and it's not for training. There could be a training component, but it's more for connection. So, and give the ath. So you create the platform, you create the environment. So you say, okay, Wednesday's 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, we're having a team meeting. I set up the call, but then give them ownership of it. So have the athletes rotate through your roster or put them in pods or small groups, and they're responsible for leading something in that session. So you can have themes. It could be sharing stories. You could read things together. They could watch things together. They could create things together. So having a regularly scheduled space for them to connect with and build it around a theme. So for example, I'm doing something with a national team right now. We're supposed to be in the Olympics in July. We're going to do a virtual Olympics. We're going to have we were supposed to play 5 games in a round robin in the Olympics. We're going to play 5 games, virtual games, 1 a week. We're going to do some imagery on their own, and then we're going to come together and we're going to talk about the game and what do we learn about our performance. And so there's the connection part is still really important, but having regularly scheduled place with the emphasis on connection and less worry about fitness levels and skill development and things like that right now.
You've written and spoken a lot over the years about reflection. How can coaches use this time maybe to reflect on their own practice? Have you got any tips or tools that they can use?
Yeah, find a space in your schedule that can be dedicated space, focused time for you to learn. So that's different for everybody. You know, you'll hear advice like, oh, get up early in the morning and do it first thing in the morning. Well, not everybody's wired that way. Some people are night owls, and some people have kids at home. Some are still working. So look at your calendar, your weekly calendar, and find a space or some spaces that can be sacred time, and you put it in your calendar. It's an appointment with yourself, just like you put in a doctor's appointment in your calendar or whatever. You're putting appointment with Wade, with myself, okay? 90 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it can be. And so it's regular, it's on your schedule, and then use that time to slowly chip away at things you want to learn more about. Because where I see people falter is they get overwhelmed. Say, oh man, where do I begin? I got 15 books I want to read, and people are sending me links to podcasts and Netflix series. Man, why even bother? Too much. Pick one and be incremental and kind of work your way through it. I came across a quote a while ago from Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, and I love it. He said, people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10. And if we take a long-term view on our learning, there's no timetable for finishing a book or finishing that video. Just be regular with it, because every opportunity that you take to take a step, it's incremental. These things will pile up, and you'll have your aha moments and your discoveries, and it will come at its own pace. So don't be and make it more time-based instead of task-based. Don't say, okay, by the end of next week, I'm finishing this book. No, set aside 3 times or whatever it is, once or twice a week for learning. I have a learning appointment. I'll read as much as I can read. I have a half hour set aside. That might be 2 pages one day. It might be 30 pages another day. So make it more time-based instead of task-based.
For yourself then, when you look back at your own coaching career and your own maybe work in the academic side of coaching as well, how have you changed or evolved over that time, or how has your understanding of yourself as a coach evolved over that time?
I've learned to be more self-compassionate. So we're often our own biggest critic. If anybody out there listening I encourage you to take a look at Brene Brown. I'll send a link through to Peter too. Peter, you're shaking your head. You've seen Brene Brown. I find coaches and athletes even love these books that she has out, and she has a Netflix show, and I think she has a podcast now that started. But her work has kind of reignited this awareness that just take it easy on yourself. Don't be so self-critical. And instead of worrying and looking at that stack of books on your desk, saying, man, I can't finish anything. I never finish a book, or I'll never get through this. You know what? I did an hour last week, and that's as much as I could give, because I still have to eat. I still have to sleep. I still have to be a dad. I still have to be a husband. I still, all these other parts of your life that you need to nourish. So I've learned to be, I used to work through the night. I used to be a taskmaster, man, and I'm not eating. This is on my to-do list today. I'm not going to bed till it's done. If that means not eating or skipping meals or not calling friends back, that's what it would be. And I quickly realized, not quickly, unfortunately, but over time, you get sick, relationships fall apart. And so I think that comes with age maybe, and reflection and insights that you have. So being more self-compassionate definitely is something I've worked on.
Maybe for a few minutes we focus on some of the maybe more technical or pedagogical aspects of coaching. Couple of questions have come in from people about use of questioning, instruction, coaching styles, and so on. Can you give our audience any advice on those things?
So I see one here. What % of questions to instruction should a coach use? So the answer, unfortunately, to any type of teaching and learning question is it depends. But depends on what? It depends on the purpose. So always connect your coaching back to your purpose. So you put a lesson plan or a practice plan together. What's the purpose? What is it that I need and want them to learn or achieve or feel today? or this, and that will dictate what the right answer is for questions to instruction. If, for example, maybe if it's early in the season and my purpose this week is really just for them to have lots of movement, have fun, spend time with teammates, maybe there's very little instruction. I'm just honestly kind of creating the conditions for lots of play, let them have fun, help fuel that fire. So it comes back to the purpose. Maybe I'm introducing a new drill or a new tactic or technique, and I want them to struggle with it a little bit because I notice they aren't very self-reliant and they're always expecting people to fix things for them or solve their problems. Well, you know what? This week, I tell all my coaches, don't answer any of their questions. Every time they ask you a question, put it back on them. What do you think? What would you do? What did you feel? So it just comes back to what's the purpose? What am I trying to achieve? What do they need in this moment? And that will dictate the right kind of ratio of question to instruction. Generally, so general rule of thumb, what I've seen, the early stages of learning are very cognitive. So a learner is always trying to make sense of what they're trying to learn. So there's lots of internal questioning. So I would say, as a general rule of thumb, early in learning, less instruction is better. Give them enough. They don't need to see the whole right now. Give them a few simple cues, let them try it. They will fail, they will fall, they will look ugly, that's fine. Then they can learn to self-adapt, they can learn to ask better questions. So not only are they learning the skill, they're learning how to learn.
You'll remember from your trip to Ireland in 2017 that the vast majority of people involved in Gaelic games, coaches are volunteer coaches, maybe parent coaches, and so on. How do you maybe see, or how would you try and recommend that coaches, support and convince each other that type of approach is the right way to go?
Yeah, I coach kids. I coach in a club. I see that firsthand. I've had struggles coaching different sports here where there's things that you see that either are wrong or detrimental or could be better, and you try and convince another adult to change things, and doesn't doesn't fly because we have egos. And so what I recommend is communication. The same principles we're trying to build with our teams in terms of connection and trust. It comes out down to trust. So when someone challenges a suggestion you make, basically they don't trust you, or they don't trust the suggestion. So if I can build better trust in my club and with parents, then we can have better conversations and we can kind of remove ego from the equation a little bit. But it's always going to be hard. Don't get me wrong, it's always hard. So I think what we've been trying to do in our clubs is more regular communication, explaining why, not just telling people what we're going to do, but why we're going to do it this way. So explaining why, have lots of regular communications, and then have, just like we're doing here, have forums, have parent forums, Zoom calls. You could do the same thing. Say, okay, we're thinking of having less structure in our practices you might notice for the first few weeks, the kids are going to be playing a lot. It's going to look a little different than we've had. You might notice we're going to actually ask your kid to design a drill. So they're going to come home and they're going to ask you, because they've been assigned to design a drill or a warm-up. And so here's why we're doing that. So imagine if you just told your team, hey, guess what, guys? I heard about this idea, or girls, of player ownership and athlete-centered coaching. So we're going to try something. everybody's going to take a turn designing a drill. And Peter, you're up tomorrow. Peter's up first. So Peter goes, parent asks, hey, Peter, how was practice? Peter goes, not bad. I don't know. Coach says I have to design a drill tomorrow. What? Parent reacts, what? That's his job. You don't have to design a drill for the other kids. That's what he should be doing, right? So there's all these assumptions versus sharing that. So it takes more time, but are there ways we can raise awareness of why we're doing what we're doing that will lead to better conversations? And then, so those are things that I've always tried to work on. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but they do seem to make some positive impact.
That conference 3 years ago, you recall your wife Janella was over as well, and she made a comment to me on the day, where are all the female coaches? Because it was a very, very heavily male-dominated event, and while it's better now, it still is to an extent. There's a number of female coaches and beginner coaches on this call. Have you any advice maybe for female coaches heading into male-dominated sports, or even coaching as a male-dominated sort of environment?
Yeah, definitely. That's common around the world. But what you're starting to see, like here in North America, and it will eventually trickle out into other sports, professional sport like Major League Baseball, NFL, football, basketball, NBA, they're starting to add women to their staff. So they're women coaching male professional sport. And people have pushback for sure. But what you're starting to see is a growing awareness that the more diverse perspectives I have on my coaching staff or in my club, the better experience this will be for my athletes. So again, it's not about you, it's about them, it's about the athletes. And if there's people who can provide different perspectives and different insights that will help make this a better environment for our kids, why would we not include them? Now, having said that, for women to kind of grow the coaching profession, it's important. Mentoring is so peer mentoring. So as much as possible, I'd encourage any woman who's interested in coaching to find a mentorship group, another support group of both of fellow women, so that you can share that journey together, but also reach out to other coaches, male and female, and ask about opportunities to be mentored. Hey, can I come watch your practice? So that you humanize it, right? It's not a male-female issue, it's a coach issue, a coach to coach. Reach out to other coaches, other sports. Say, hey, can I come watch one of your practices? And then what you start to see is it becomes normal. So you normalize that type of situation. So I'd say peer mentorship, but also mentorship with coaches across sports, and definitely reach out across gender as well.
Okay, we're just on the hour now, but Wade, myself spoke earlier on, and Wade is happy to keep going for another 15-20 minutes if everyone else is happy to listen. So keep the questions coming if you wish. A couple of questions maybe that came in advance. What was the best piece of coaching advice you were ever given?
Don't coach. No. Well, actually, one that's kind of funny that people toss around a lot is make sure you coach an orphanage, no parents to argue with. But in terms of coaching advice, I guess would be, don't pretend or try to put pressure on yourself to have all the answers, because we do have a perceived image of what a coach is and what a coach does, and coaches are supposed to lead, and coaches are supposed to have all the answers and responsibility. So letting go of that and be a better listener. So ask lots of questions and listen to your athletes. Ask them. They're out there playing. They see stuff we don't see. They'll feel things we don't feel. So make a habit of your athletes for their input and and then of course get outside of your sport. So if you love hurling or football or tennis or cycling, whatever it might be, you have to get out of your sport. Not go coach other, but talk to coaches from other sports. Go watch practices of coaches in other sports. Have coaches from other sports come and watch your practice and then have a discussion. So getting out of your sport to learn about, because that forces you to look at principles. So it's not necessarily about techniques and tactics. It forces you to start asking why. Well, that's interesting. Why'd you start practice like that? I noticed you switched to this drill over there and then you gave him a break. Why'd you do it that way? Because in our sport, we do it this way. So then you end up having these really neat conversations about coaching and principles of coaching. And also there's no ego involved because we're not competing against each other. We're just two coaches learning together.
You might have answered this in that response as well, but a couple of weeks ago with Stuart Lancaster, that you might know from Leinster Rugby, he was good enough to do a session for us. And one of our audience asked this question, and it sort of threw him for a second. What was the best piece of advice you've been given that you wished you had not ignored?
Sorry, you cut out, Peter.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the best piece of advice that you have been given but you ignored, and you wish you didn't ignore it now? It's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, probably, I must admit, I was quite shy for a long time, bit of an introvert, and didn't ask enough questions for fear of looking stupid, asking a dumb question, fear of failure. You know, they're very
Okay, I think Wade's internet connection has just dropped for a second. We might just give it a second and see does it come back up. There we go.
I'm back on.
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry.
You're okay.
But yeah, just I do, you know.
No, I think we're gone again. We might just give it one more second to see if things come back right for us.
Back again.
Yeah, you're back again. Yeah, we have you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just to finish that, there definitely were moments where I had opportunities to ask questions, go and observe people, but for whatever reason, I was insecure and felt that I wasn't ready for that, or why would they want to talk to me? You know, things like that. But just, yeah, reach out. You'd be shocked, right? You reach out to people, and most people in coaching are very open and they love talking about coaching. Doesn't
Okay, we think we've lost again. We might just finish up with one more question if Wade does come back. And we might just give it another couple of seconds to see if there's anything there. Yeah, Wade, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the question.
You're okay. We might just finish up with one question then. Are there any coaching resources or books or sites or learning opportunities that you might suggest for some of our audience?
Yeah, there's many. There's one in the United States. It's referred to as Way of Champions, and I'll send through the link. They actually have
Okay, I think we're losing again.
Sorry. I guess the the powers that be are trying to tell us we should finish. Keep
Okay,
losing the connection. But I will send you through a link. Way of Champions is a good one, and they also have podcasts and lots of resources. That would be a good one at the moment. I think that people would enjoy.
Wade is too modest to recommend his own book, Coaching Better Every Season. And for those of you who haven't got a copy, you should go get one. Is there a second edition or an updated version coming out anytime?
The publisher has been asking me for a year to write the next book. I just haven't made. I was going to say haven't had time, but you make choices on time. I haven't made time to do that. And honestly, I'm thinking more and more once to get through the Olympics, and the next one will come out. But there is. I did notice the other day they updated. I'll send you the link. They updated the website that has commentaries and webinars. So there's a lot of free material on the website around the book and the book messages. And I do see a comment that just came in here. Can you put the list of books, podcasts on the site? As soon as I'm off the call, I'll send you some links and you can share them.
Perfect. Wade, thanks very, very much for coming on the call. I know it's just coming up to lunchtime or so for you over there. So thanks very, very much for engaging with us and putting in the time and effort over the last number of days and weeks in pulling together a lot of the content and material. It was great to have you over in 2017. I know you were over in Ireland subsequently and potentially maybe again, depending on how things work out with this pandemic, maybe next year back in Ireland again. And if that's the case, we'll try and meet up and do some more good work. So I think Wade is just gone again. So I think at this stage, we'll just try and finish up here. We have the next session of our webinar series is on this Thursday evening. We have Johnny Bradley, who's the director of the MSc in Performance Analysis in IT Carlow. And he's also worked with numerous inter-county squads in Gaelic games, as well as international teams across various different sports in Ireland. So Johnny's session will be on this Thursday at 7:30. And the registration for that opened there about 10 minutes ago, just at 8:30 on the GA Learning webpage. So if you want to go back and register your interest to go to see Johnny on Thursday evening, please do so. Wade, again, thanks very much on behalf of everybody here. The feedback that's coming through, you can see it is fantastic. And we really, really appreciate, as I said, all the time you've put into this.
You and I wish I could see everyone. I really appreciate you making time to continue to invest in your coaching and get better. And I've loved all my trips to Ireland, and I would definitely love to get back and visit and spend more time over there. Thanks, Peter.
Brilliant. Thanks everybody for everything, and wish everyone a good evening and safe rest of the week. Thank you.